Welcome back to What Is, the show where we explore the mysteries of our world. Today we're taking a closer look at one of the hottest topics around global warming. So grab a seat as we break down the science behind rising temperatures and what we can all do to help cool things down. If you want to dig into the facts, don't forget to hit the bell icon and subscribe. Most scientists agree that global warming is a real phenomenon, referring to the long-term increase in Earth's average temperature. But how does global warming actually work? At its core, global warming is caused by an increase in greenhouse gases in the Earth's atmosphere. These gases include carbon dioxide, methane, and nitrous oxide, naturally trap heat from the sun, keeping our planet warm enough to support life. This process is called the greenhouse effect. Think of it as a warm, cozy blanket wrapped around the Earth. Sunlight passes through the atmosphere and heats the planet's surface. The Earth then emits this energy back as infrared radiation, in other words, as heat. Greenhouse gases absorb this infrared radiation, trapping some of the heat in the atmosphere instead of letting it escape into space, turning up the heat on our planet little by little. The blanket gets thicker, trapping more heat, causing the global average temperature to rise. This warming disrupts Earth's delicate climate balance, leading to changes in weather patterns, more extreme heat waves, melting ice caps, rising sea levels, and increased frequency of extreme weather events like hurricanes and droughts. But how did we get here? To understand the urgency of today's climate crisis, we need to take a step back and look at the history of our planet's temperature. The journey of understanding global warming is both fascinating and alarming. As early as the 19th century, scientists began to notice the connection between industrial activity and the Earth's changing climate. In 1824, French scientist Joseph Fourier first proposed the idea that gases in the atmosphere could trap heat, a concept that would later become central to our understanding of global warming. But it wasn't until the 1950s that scientists started to collect the data that would confirm human activity was significantly altering the climate. One of the key moments came in 1956, when Charles David Keeling began his groundbreaking research on carbon dioxide levels at the Mauna Loa Observatory in Hawaii. His famous Keeling curve showed a clear upward trend in CO2 levels, marking the beginning of the scientific consensus on human-caused climate change. As the decades passed, more and more evidence began to pile up. The 1972 UN Conference on the Human Environment in Stockholm marked one of the first international efforts to address environmental issues on a global scale. As the 1980s progressed, it became clear that the rising temperatures weren't just a coincidence. In 1988, the Intergovernmental Panel on Climate Change was created to assess the growing body of evidence and provide a scientific overview of the situation. Their first report concluded that the Earth's temperature was indeed rising, largely due to human activities like burning fossil fuels. The IPCC predicted that if these trends continued, temperatures could rise by 0.3 degrees Celsius to 0.6 degrees Celsius per decade. While this may seem like a small increase, it is actually a significant change over time, as even a 1 degree Celsius rise in global temperature can have profound effects on ecosystems, weather patterns, and sea levels. The report also highlighted the urgent need for global cooperation to address the issue. This was the beginning of a global effort to tackle climate change, with major international discussions and agreements starting to take shape. But wasn't it already too late? According to many scientists at the time, the 1990s was still a window of opportunity. The Earth had already begun to warm, yes, but the damage wasn't irreversible, not yet. Reports from the Intergovernmental Panel on Climate Change warned the balance of evidence suggests a discernible human influence on global climate. It was the first time the scientific community collectively pointed to humanity as a driver of global warming. one of the report's lead authors, recently passed Sir John Houghton, didn't mince words. He cautioned that without urgent action, we could face irreversible changes to the climate system. At the same time, James Hansen at NASA continued pressing the US government with data showing that CO2 levels were rising faster than expected, calling for bold moves before it was too late. There was momentum. Al Gore, then US Vice President, began pushing climate into mainstream politics. In Europe, Angela Merkel, serving as Germany's environment minister from 1994 to 1998, emerged as a rising voice for international environmental responsibility. She hosted the first major UN climate conference in Berlin in 1995, laying the groundwork for what came next, the Kyoto Protocol. Signed in 1997, Kyoto was the world's first legally binding treaty aimed at reducing greenhouse gas emissions, but it was a landmark, a signal that the world was ready to take real, measurable action. But not everyone got on board. The United States under President George W. Bush refused to ratify the treaty. Without one of the world's largest emitters, Kyoto's impact was blunted from the start. But the world has gathered again, and again, and again. Copenhagen in 2009, Lima 2014, the Paris Agreement from 2015, several UN climate change conferences. And yet, the Earth didn't get the memo. We had the facts. We even had award-winning PowerPoint slides. But while the world clapped politely, the planet kept sweating. Turns out, climate change wasn't waiting for us to catch up. The planet started answering back, loudly. In 2009, Australia was hit by the Black Saturday bushfires, which killed 173 people and destroyed thousands of homes. Only a year later, Russia experienced a deadly heatwave that claimed over 50,000 lives and sparked massive wildfires. In 2012, the Arctic sea ice hit record low, shrinking just 3.41 million square kilometers, a dramatic symbol of the region warming nearly twice as fast as the global average. Typhoon Haiyan, one of the strongest tropical cyclones ever recorded. Hurricane Harvey, Typhoon Mangkhut. California's wildfire seasons became longer and more destructive. In the Amazon, fires raged, threatening one of the planet's most vital carbon sinks. Meanwhile, the Maldives and other Pacific Island nations sounded the alarm as rising sea levels flooded villages and saltwater poisoned crops. The message was clear. This wasn't theory anymore. The clock was ticking. And yet, not everyone's buying the global warming ticket. There's a whole squad of skeptics who think it's all a big hoax, sometimes blaming it on a mysterious global cooling conspiracy. Other times waving the "it's just natural cycles" flag like it's a get-out-of-jail-free card. You'll hear classics like, "It's the sun, not us." Even though scientists have tracked solar activity, and spoiler alert, it doesn't explain the recent warming. Or climate scientists just want more funding, because who doesn't love a juicy grant, right? Then there's the ever-popular, if Earth is warming, why is it still cold in winter? A question that confuses weather, which changes daily with climate. Some skeptics go full conspiracy mode, claiming it's all a ploy by governments or corporations to control us. Because apparently melting glaciers are just part of the master plan. It's like the plot of a bad sci-fi movie, but sadly, it's real life. And they aren't just random folks on the internet. Some big names have made headlines denying climate science. At one point, the US President Donald Trump even claimed that global warming was created by and for the Chinese, not as a planetary emergency, but as a clever ploy to sabotage American factories. Senator Jim Inhofe famously calling global warming a hoax. Alex Jones, known for conspiracy theories, also dismissed climate change as fake news. Even Kanye West has voiced doubts about it, though that's not exactly shocking. These myths are like climate change's clingy ex, impossible to shake off and always popping up just when you think you're done with the conversation. And while world leaders argued, a teenager in Sweden decided she had enough. Greta Thunberg skipped school and started a protest that turned into a global movement. Fridays for Future spread like wildfire. Millions of young people marched in cities around the globe with homemade signs and one powerful question: why aren't you doing more? For some, she's an alarmist, a tool of political agendas, too young, too radical, too loud. But whether you admire her or roll your eyes when you hear her name, one thing's for sure, she changed the conversation. Meanwhile, the science kept rolling in, and it wasn't sugar-coated. Lest we should do something, more do it now or else. So here we are. Wildfires in Canada turned skies in New York orange. Record heat waves hit Europe. Floods, droughts, disappearing glaciers. This is not science fiction. Here's the bottom line. The overwhelming majority of climate scientists agree that global warming is happening, and humans are the main cause. The evidence, rock solid. The consequences, unmistakable. The time to act, yesterday. So, what is global warming? It's not just melting ice or scary graphs. It's a planet quietly screaming for help. It's politics, science, money, and yes, a bit of drama too. It's the story of us turning up the heat on ourselves. Of course, what you do with this info is entirely up to you. You can dive into the data, connect the dots, maybe even swap your SUV for a bike. Or call it a hoax and wait for winter to prove your point. If this episode made you sweat, don't forget to hit that bell icon and subscribe for more hot takes on a heating planet. Thanks for watching, and as always, stay curious.